effectively said that due to a dispute between the landlord and the tenant, that the venue is closed until further notice. But basically the concern here is that APRA and other PROs in Australia can't 100% verify that their royalty payments, the payments that artists have been receiving, are correct, which has prompted a lot of fears that artists are getting underpaid or that royalties haven't been calculated correctly.
One of the quotes was quite possibly fraud and or incompetence leading to underpayment of royalties.
Gentlemen, this is Democracy Manifest.
All right, we're back.
We're back again, regular in terms of you had an interview, and now it's some music news, and you know what? Next week's going to be an interview, and it'll start kind of feeling normal again.
How was your long weekend? We're recording this on Monday, which is a public holiday in New South Wales, sucked in the other states who don't get one. There are 3 states who do get the public holiday for Anzac Day. We get it, so we're taking this opportunity to sit down and record a music news. It was my wife's birthday on Saturday as well.
Shout outs to Ella.
Shout outs. I surprised her with tickets to see The Lion King in Sydney, and this was nowhere near as stressful as the engagement, like, you know, when you're proposing, but it was all those levels where you're like, I've done something, it's exciting, and I just want to tell her, but I'm like, oh no, I also want to surprise her. So I bought the tickets in like October last year, and then only revealed on the morning of her birthday, oh, by the way, we're going to go see The Lion King in Sydney tonight, which was exciting, but I also almost spilled the beans early because prior to her birthday, she was annoyed at me because she assumed I hadn't planned anything, and I did, quote, last minute birthday shopping, which is when I would duck to the shops to get some gifts. So she had something to open on her birthday as well as the main present.
Wait, how did she ascertain this?
Well, because I told her like 2 days before her birthday, I'm going to the shops to do birthday shopping. In her mind, that was, I hadn't planned anything and I was doing last minute birthday shopping, which I can see how she jumped to those conclusions. But the point of the story is I had something planned. So that's the moral of this little story, is to have some patience, I suppose.
And may I remind everybody listening, assuming makes an ass out of you and me. It's one of my favourites.
It's one of my dad's favourites as well.
Yeah, you can't go wrong.
Her birthday was on Anzac Day, so typically it is a public holiday typically, and things are normally closed. So if I don't plan ahead, it is often quite a disappointing birthday. And the last couple of years, I've been more thinking about the gift that I'm buying as opposed to what we're going to do on her birthday. So this year I thought I'll completely flip that and I'll focus on what we're doing on the birthday instead of the gifts. And then it got to the last minute and I thought, oh, hang on, I need to buy something so she has something to open on her birthday as well, which is why she made that assumption. So like I said, understandable to make the assumption, but you know, there's a lesson in that for everybody.
That's right. Let that be Cam's nugget of wisdom imparted on you before we dive into a range of stories for the music news today, which are one's good, but there's not that many good things that we're talking about today, but it is what it is. Hopefully these kind of conversations help move the needle.
Sorry, can I just say, so I'm at home doing this podcast and my wife has just messaged me saying, bitch, don't talk about me on your podcast. I'm a gem. Good things only, please.
I know how to fix that, Cam.
Yeah.
It's opposite day. You're all good.
Problem solved.
That's funny, yes.
No, but you are a gem. I love you dearly.
See, he knows what he's doing. And you got Lion King to look forward to. Let's go.
Already done it. Saw it over the weekend. It was great.
That was literally on the weekend. Sorry.
Yeah, so I literally, the morning of her birthday, I was like, hey, guess what? It's in the Lion King tonight. And I'd booked a hotel in Darling Harbour, spent the night in Sydney on Saturday night. It was lovely.
I'm with you. Okay. That's excellent. Well, happy birthday, Ella. I'm sure that absolutely met expectations. Cam, you're a gem too, mate. Both of you are gems. But yeah, we'll start with a bit of we've got a meaty one to get into, and it's going to be this is going to be us delivering maybe not all of it, because we want to keep a little bit back and speak to one particular person who is on the front lines of this story. But if we can start local, right here on the Central Coast, there has been a bit of a disappointing, well, definitely a very disappointing development coming out of Drifters Wharf over the weekend, where patrons who had lunches and events booked for Anzac Day itself arrived at the venue only to find themselves locked out, along with all of the staff. There was a notice on the door effectively said that due to a dispute between the landlord and the tenant, that the venue is closed until further notice, which was, obviously we have been ringing the praises of Drifters since they opened up shop here on the Central Coast because of what they've brought in terms of shows and artists and legitimacy to the coast. So to see this happening is definitely concerning, and we can only hope that there's a resolution, that is achievable, which Drifters seem to, be suggesting areas which is positive, and this isn't literally kind of the end of the venue.
Yeah, that's what we're hoping, because obviously, yeah, as you touched on, like once they opened, they were, the premier go-to venue on the Central Coast for a lot of the bigger touring acts. We saw in the early days, acts like San Cisco and Holy Holy, all these massive, national acts who would normally bypass the Central Coast and go to Sydney and Newcastle were actually playing on the coast, which is really exciting for all of us. But they, as you mentioned, a dispute between the landlord. There was a notice that was put up outside the Drifters the shop window, I suppose, if you like, saying that non-payment of rent or outgoings and a breach of the lease, which are pretty much the same thing. So conditions of the lease is that you need to pay the lease. So those 2 points are pretty much the same thing, is that the landholder believes that the money was falling behind and that the lease was hereby terminated, is one of the consequences. They also can't occupy the premises. Also, any attempt to enter the premises without the landlord's permission is considered trespassing and will be treated criminally. And also that the belongings inside the venue will be dealt with according to the terms of the lease and the New South Wales law. So it's a pretty detailed and authoritative post, if you will, like a very legitimate bit of paper that was inside the shop window. And I dare say that, without wishing to speculate too much, this wouldn't have been the first step to resolve, the apparent lease issues. Like, I imagine there would have been a fair bit of mediating that would have happened before it just comes to straight up lockout.
Yeah, undeniably, that's like a drastic action that you're probably not going to lead with if you want your negotiations to go well. And yeah, it's probably not the first point of contact they've had due to, issues to do with payment. We obviously don't know at all what's going on, so we're not really going to speculate one way or another until more information has become available.
What I will say is that, having experienced myself in real estate in the past, that sort of 3-year period I had there, we also dealt with commercial leases at the real estate agency I was at. And there were times where the lease would fall behind, you chase them up, and it got to a point where you'd have to notify the people and say, if the lease isn't paid, we'll have to get the rangers involved and change the locks and all of that. So it looks like that's the steps that would have, with my prior experience, I would say that this is how they've gotten to this point, is that they've had to, they have chased them up and they've said, okay, well, we're going to have to change locks and lock you out. And that's how we've gotten to that. That's typically how these things go.
Yeah. So you wonder, is this a redeemable situation? We're not sure. Obviously, there's a stack of speculation floating around online. You can read that for yourself. We're not going to repeat any of it until there is more information available. What we will say is that Drifters, so this happened, this post went up. I saw this kind of early in the day, and before there'd been any kind of response, someone just posted it on a community group on Facebook. Drifters responded later on that afternoon or that evening. They're saying, due to an unresolved dispute with our landlord, we're currently unable to operate as planned. This may take some time to resolve. All shows and functions over the next 30 days will be relocated to different venues and refunds will be available where required. All reservations are cancelled until further notice. We appreciate your patience and support. See you soon. So that's a bit more of an optimistic look at it from the Drifters crew themselves. And I did see people say, like you might look at this specifically and go, well, they just haven't paid their rent. And that may be the case, of course. But there's a range of situations that can occur between a tenant and a landlord, particularly in a commercial environment where perhaps if certain things haven't been done that are deemed or seen as the responsibility of the landlord, for example, and for compensation for that, say the tenant has to pay for it themselves, they could stop paying rent in order to cover those costs. And the dispute may be about something to do with maintenance, something to do with, things that need doing. Then there's a dispute over kind of whose responsibility that is. One party's made the decision to withhold payment or close up the venue due to that dispute. So this could be like any range of things that's gone on. And that's why I think we just got to kind of keep an open mind and consider that hopefully like that kind of positive take from the crew from Drifters means that there is a resolution possible that they're working on. Obviously the other side that could be bad is we could be seeing the end of this venue here on the Central Coast. We know it's kind of the same crew run Mumbo Jumbos, which has been thriving, seems to have been thriving for a long time, but they also ran Shady Palms, which shut down, I want to say about 12 months ago now. That's a very that's pulling out of the air guess. So we can only hope that, this is something that is redeemable and they can kind of get it sorted. Either way, how these relocations happen and all that kind of stuff remains to be seen. The only thing I kind of thought was, well, we've got the new Woodies that's just reopened. I haven't checked it out yet, but the new Wood put in, and I think they were making a play for larger scale events there. Mm-hmm. So maybe these events could just be moved over to Erina, without too much fuss. So the Central Coast isn't missing out on these gigs, because I was literally the day before this happened, I was looking at the Drifters Instagram, so they had Radium Dolls, Brisbane band or Queensland band coming to play. Apparently they're an amazing live show, and I was like, beauty, done. And then this happened. So hopefully all those gigs, if you've got tickets to them or you've been eyeing off a particular show, those gigs are going to get moved somewhere else on the coast and not shunted up to Newcastle or down to Sydney, which would, make it a little less available to people from our area.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because obviously, as you mentioned, they do own Mumbo's. So I would like to think that any gigs that they had planned there that could feasibly be moved to Mumbo's, that's probably a logical choice and option for them. One of those shows that was meant to happen was Kalani Artis. He was doing a hometown sort of thank you show after his run on Australian Idol. And he said that, the show, which was meant to be on the 17th of May, that has been cancelled due to unforeseen issues at Drifters Wharf. So that a new venue, as of recording, has not yet been announced. So I'll be, watching that one with keen eyes to see where that one will go. But I mean, the site the Drifters is on, like you sort of mentioned, it doesn't necessarily mean there is fault on Drifters per se. Prior to Drifters, they've been there for 8 years now? I think I went to a gig there, or maybe it wasn't quite 8 years. It's at least 6, I reckon.
It probably is now you say it. It is, yeah, it would be. It kind of doesn't feel like it, but I've been going there since pre-COVID, I think. Yeah,
I remember the first time I got COVID was immediately after seeing Holy Holy there.
But there you go.
But it wasn't because Holy Holy, which you and I were at that gig together, Eamon. It wasn't because I got COVID from that gig. My wife, who was meant to come with us, was at home sick and later found out that she had COVID. And that would have been 2021, I reckon. Maybe 2022. But anyway, point being, they've been there for a while now and seemingly prior to this running quite a successful business. But prior to Drifters, we had a whole range of venues and restaurants opening and closing and opening and closing. Like since Iguana Joe's.
Yes.
Between then and Drifters, there seemed to be a lot of chopping and changing. So I don't know how much, goes into just the, without knowing obviously inside details of every business that has come and gone, and knowing, who the landlords and what they're like, and, what the rents are and all that sort of stuff. Like, there's obviously a massive range of factors there. But yeah, maybe that's something that we need to consider as well, that, there's been a lot of venues coming and going, and Drifters for a long time did seem to, have a sustainable way of attracting people and propping up the business there.
Yeah. And we know obviously crowds, gig sales have been hot and cold and since COVID pretty much, and none of that would have helped, no doubt, but you'd definitely be there and see some very, very busy nights. So, it seemed to be chugging along. You never know what's going on behind the scenes, of course. The kind of one silver lining to this, I would say, is that had this happened kind of 5-6 years ago, and say this does result in the closure of Drifters, the way the scene was on the coast in that time, you might be, you'd be going, okay, well, there goes our one chance at having a good venue. I feel like now, though, there's enough that has happened and been built, and enough going on, and enough players in the scene, that if this is the end of Drifters, which we hope it isn't, but if it is, it's not just like there goes our chance. There will be another, whether that's, sooner or later, and there'll be probably people working immediately to kind of maybe fill that space, whether it's at the same venue or somewhere else. And Woodport, just reopening is a pretty good example of that. But there's more and more popping up around the coast. Drifters was the biggest room that we kind of had on the coast. So, hopefully it just means that I feel confident enough in the culture and the scene here on the coast now that it's not all lost. Although, you never want to see businesses failing or going down, and we really do hope that a resolution can be worked out here.
Yeah, and there could even potentially be venues who are considering a play to be a competitor to Drifters. You might have gone, oh, maybe it's not worth the risk, or it's not worth upgrading a license type, or, whatever the case may have been. With Drifters now, in limbo, we're not sure what the future's going to be. Maybe there is an opportunity for that venue to go, all right, let's make a play to be a competitor and to bring some bands to our venue and becoming a premier venue on the coast. And then, obviously this is very optimistic, I understand that. But, if you have potentially two different businesses wanting to jump forward, then suddenly there's a much more healthier ecosystem in play. Even if there are some more medium-sized venues, which, when we speak to artists, they say, we've got a lot of the entry-level type venues. We've got Lincoln Pin down in Woy Woy. There's a range of other awesome venues who are sort of really supporting and promoting emerging musicians. We had Drifters, but the sort of in the middle, artists who would, easily, sell out these smaller venues, but not quite big enough to go to Drifters. There was no real space for them. So I think we need, a couple of those to come forward. And then, obviously we do want a premier venue on the coast as well. Could still be Drifters, but we don't know what the future's going to be.
Yes, 100%. So we'll be keeping an eye on that as more developments come to light. Hopefully it's a quick resolution though, but I mean, we know that, gigs for the next month or so, you're not going to be going to Drifters, but hopefully they can resolve this. I think it's in everyone's interest, really, the landlord to have to go through the closure of the venue, trying to find a new tenant, blah, 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 blah. That's not fun, and they lose a lot of income that way. Likewise, the venue doesn't want to close down. So hopefully they can find their shared interests and make it all work, but we'll be keeping an eye on it and keeping you updated as we find some things out. Now, some more positive things happening in Gosford. This one you'll be hearing on Thursday, this Sunday, 3rd of May. We've got the Gosford Strip Block Party happening. This has been organised by the Gosford Strip Precinct, which is a collection of businesses within Gosford who have lobbied really hard with the organisation of this event and worked in with the local council, the New South Wales government. Liesl Tesh is involved to get Donison Street closed down. Oh, sorry, my mistake. To get Man Street between Donison Street, which is where the Archibald is, and Erina Street has been closed down, or will be closed down on Sunday, to create a pedestrian first massive event going on. All businesses on that strip are involved and will be open on that day. There's going to be live music, a whole bunch of other good things happening. Boy Soda will be headlining it. Local hero doing wonderful things. You'll also be hearing from Rosie and the Quest, Summer Healy, the Morrisons, Tigua, DJ Mathematics, DJ Moody Pants, and a whole bunch more. It kicks off at 12 midday and goes all the way through to 8 p.m. And there's going to be stacks going on in that period with that street closure on that day. So get down to Gosford on Sunday for a more positive live music experience. And at least we've got good things happening elsewhere.
Yeah, very excited to see Bray or Boy Soda performing on the Central Coast. Again, obviously a Terrigal local, now based in Sydney, I believe. But certainly, a coastie at heart and someone who is, we followed his career and journey for a long time. So very excited to see him. But so just quickly, as you were going through that, I had an inkling and a remembering, and I've sort of done a search and I've got confirmations. So this is now going back to the Drifters story. One of the owners of Drifters is Steve Sewell. He's also one of the founders or operators, creators, I don't know the official title, but of Noisy Group, who are a Central Coast-based sort of collective, along with Matt Wise. And they recently, only 5 weeks ago, announced an expanded roster and secured 6 new venues. So the Hornsby RSL, the Tacking Point Tavern in Port Macquarie.
Say that 10 times.
Yeah, I can't even say it once. The Beach Hotel in Newcastle, the Royal Hotel in Kew, New South Wales, or KEW. But yeah, 6 new venues that they acquired. That's alongside Kingscliff Hotel, the Recce in Foster Tuncurry, the Vineyard Hotel, the Shed on the Sunshine Coast. So they've got a big roster of venues, to my point. And one of the people behind Noisy Group is also connected and behind Drifters Wharf. So I'm not sure how these... 5 weeks ago they announced the acquisitions of 6 new venues, which seems odd timing to have 6 new venues and then the next one, we're not sure what's going to happen to. But hopefully, as you said, there's some positive news out of it.
Yeah. Let's hope that means. I mean, that could be perceived in a number of ways. That could be perceived as money going to those new venues and maybe not satisfying your existing requirements, or it could be a range of things. Again, trying really hard not to speculate, even though we probably have a bit.
Yeah, we don't want to speculate, but I just remembered that detail that I saw it on socials a few weeks ago, and so I've just confirmed that. So make your own conclusions, I suppose, with that information. But it is puzzling, and as you said, we're hopeful for the future of Drifters, of course, but certainly a wait and see.
Yes, absolutely. So that's going on. You've got Gosford Block Party happening. That's going to be going down on. Pardon?
Back to more positives.
Back to more positive. Yeah, the Gosford Block Party going on Sunday, the 3rd of May. So make sure you get down to that if you're in the area, if you can. The Gosford Strip Block Party, I should say. And that's kind of our neg pos story. And now we just move to our specifically negative story, or potentially negative story, which comes to us via an Australian artist, Johan Peel, also going just by Joe, I believe. He is the front man of a band named Tuggerah. And has been doing a really eye-opening look into the way our royalty systems work and how artists are remunerated across Australia and even the world. We're going to try and keep it just to Australia for running through this exact story. But he's been looking at how royalty systems are paid and is concerned, to say the least, we should say.
Yeah, and eyebrow raising is, I think, a term that we can connect to this story. We, in preparation for this, did quite a lot of research into this story, and we still feel like I've barely scratched the surface, which is why, as Eamon alluded to at the beginning, we are we haven't reached out to him yet, but we are planning to reach out to Joe and to try and get him to interview him on a pod and to break this down further as someone who has first-hand experience. Obviously, we're just recounting, his experiences and doing our best to break it down for you and doing a bit of research and to try and get our heads around it, because it is, music rights and royalties and everything. It's its own beast, which I obviously, as non-musicians, we hadn't really dealt with it before, but we know we have a lot of musicians listening to us. So if you are listening to this pod and you are a musician and you would like to share your experiences, either with APRA AMCOS or with the PPCA or a different type of PRO, these are all acronyms that I'm kind of learning throughout this process. But if you would like to share your experiences, you know where to find us. Links are in the show notes or the description if you're watching this on YouTube. At Homebrewed Media is on Insta the best way to reach us. But share your experiences with us, because we would love to dive deep with you on that. But long and the short of it, for non-musicians like us or people who don't, we haven't spoken about what the story is yet, I suppose, so we should probably get into it. APRA and other PROs in Australia, the story is, a few stories. One, the ACCC in December announced that they would be looking into the licensing arrangements and trying to better protect creators and licensees under new music arrangements. This was in December. They were seeking feedback from creatives up until midway through February. They have not yet handed down, as of time of recording, their final findings, but obviously, the ACCC, the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, they're currently looking at Coles and Woolies as well for the anti-competitive behaviours. They're obviously very busy. But as part of, their wide scoping jurisdictions, they were looking into APRA. They even said that they had a, quote, near monopoly, which in looking into it, there's not really a lot of other places you can go to outside of APRA AMCOS for these sorts of licensing. But yeah, like I said, I haven't even got my head fully around it yet, which is probably why I'm not making a lot of sense in trying to describe this story to you, because a lot of my notes are basically just definitions around who APRA are, who AMCOS are, how they're connected, who the PPCA are, what is a PRO and what is a CMO, and what does APRA jurisdiction, what do they cover, what does AMCOS cover, and how is that different to PPCA? It's a whole rabbit hole.
It's a rabbit hole. We can start by just explaining. So we're talking about APRA AMCOS. You'll probably hear that mentioned a fair bit, in and around the Australian music industry. APRA is the Australian Performing Rights Association. AMCOS is the Australasian Mechanical Copyright Owners Society. And APRA AMCOS, they're mentioned together quite often. A PRO, which you'll hear us mention, is a performing rights organisation. APRA is an example of that. And basically the concern here that has been raised by Johan, who we've been speaking about, Johan Peel, is that because APRA issues royalties to Australian artists virtually unopposed, they don't have much competition in Australia. So APRA, just for a bit of context, they cover the composition, lyrics and melody, and then they pay royalties for live performances, radio, TV, and streaming. So if you're an artist, you will sign up to APRA, you'll become a member, they will manage the payments of royalties. You'll become like a licensee to your own music, and they will manage the payment of royalties to you. And then there's another side to royalty payments, which is the PPCA. The PPCA is a phonographic performance company of Australia. Now, they manage the actual sound recording or the music video, the master, and they pay royalties when recordings are broadcast or played in public, like cafes and gyms. So hopefully that makes sense. But basically the concern here is that APRA and other PROs in Australia can't 100% verify that their royalty payments, the payments that artists have been receiving, are correct, which has prompted a lot of fears that artists are getting underpaid or that royalties haven't been calculated correctly over time. And because the way APRA operates in Australia, the ACCC issues it a license to do what it does. And it is more or less, by the ACCC's own admission, operating as a monopoly. There's not much in the way of competition that even comes close to it. So, you think Coles and Woolies, they're our duopoly supermarket giants. APRA, when it comes to royalty payment and this type of licensing, is literally one of the only operators of scale in Australia doing that. The concern is if APRA were to be getting their numbers wrong one way or another, well, there's no one to compare them to, no other artists on a different model who might be seeing different results to say, hey, something isn't quite seeming right. And so this has prompted some pretty big concern from people like Johan Peel that when and if ACCC decide to extend this license, which is more than likely, they're not going to just throw it all in for 5 years, these issues are going to persist and artists are going to continue to be getting, potentially underpaid because the systems aren't adequate.
Yeah, as you said, they can't. APRA AMCOS said that we can't 100% verify royalty payments. We can't look at the data and say this is 100% what we have paid you and why. And according to Joe on his Instagram posts, he said that it was because they said it was effectively, the long and the short of it is that it would be too expensive for APRA AMCOS, who is a not-for-profit. We did confirm that. They said that about 86 cents per dollar is paid towards licensing and royalties. But in terms, if you're an artist, whether you're a songwriter, whether you're a musician, whichever, part of the creative chain you are a part of, you cannot have your royalties verified 100% that you are being paid the correct amount of royalties. And as you said, Eamon, there are fears that we could be seeing people underpaid. According to the ACCC, in an internal email, this is a big part of how Joe's post went explosive. He said he was accidentally copied in on like an internal email or memo. And one of the quotes was quite possibly fraud and or incompetence leading to underpayment of royalties, which is a massive statement. And if that is come from, allegedly, from the ACCC, there could be some serious repercussions to come.
Yeah, so Joe hasn't obviously, gone and dropped this email. He said he was so he's been kind of probing APRA AMCOS and the ACCC himself about these concerns.
And he was supplying his own experience, his own data, like, hey, this is what I've been paid and these are my numbers, and supplying his own evidence to the ACCC as well as part of their findings, which, as I said, they were wanting people to do that. Deadline was Feb 16th, I think it was.
Yes, yeah, 100%. So he's been kind of making those submissions and making that noise to the relevant bodies. They have, taken his information, accidentally CC'd him into an internal memo on responding. On responding, he's suggesting that the ACCC themselves have suggested that there could be, like issues with the payment system, which could be characterised as fraud. And he said 10 minutes later, he received a follow-up email asking him to delete that email. He's refused to do so, preserving the document. However, he's not going to release that publicly, which is wise of him. And he's since been digging a little bit further, but obviously we had this report released, the draft response or draft report from the ACCC released in December last year. They were asking for submissions from the public on this particular issue to see kind of, what the public reckon about this. Johan has been making these submissions as well. And the ACCC were looking already at stronger conditions, like in this kind of draft report, stronger conditions aimed at enhancing accountability and transparency within APRA's operations. And they themselves have characterised it as a near monopoly. So the concern is, of course, that we're in the process, or we're at the very pointy end of the ACCC deciding whether or not to extend the license, which, is, as I said, more than likely going to happen. However, these sound like, conditions need to be added to increase at the very least transparency. Everything could be fine behind the books, but the fact is people aren't able to see that or understand that. The worst case scenario is there's a really bad system that's operating to calculate royalties, which, you know, admittedly become very difficult to calculate in the era of streaming. You know, when you could just sell CDs, well, it's a very easy way to count it. But these days it's a lot more tricky because of how we listen to and consume music. But the worst case is this system is completely broken. And for however long, artists have been getting underpaid when it comes to royalties. I also think, based on, you know, this limited understanding, that's going to be a pretty tricky thing if they did find that was the case, a pretty tricky thing to go back and retrospectively try and correct or back pay or anything like that. I think that kind of window is already closed, even though we haven't worked out what the issue is yet. But either way, it's very concerning. It's enough to have Joe or Johan very concerned. And he's been going deep. Like, I was having a look at some of the stuff that he's done. He was fighting with regulators across the world to release their data, and he won. I think 10 different jurisdictions across the world received a whole bunch of data so that he could kind of compare and build his own case and see how these things are operating. And he is, you know, super, super concerned about what's going on with how APRA are licensing and paying royalties to artists. And we know that there's already an absolute shit creek that artists have to paddle up to get, you know, any kind of fair payment for their work in 2026. This, if true, you know, could represent yet another pretty big issue with that. So our aim, because we were having a look through this and we're like, you know, there's so much you can understand. There's a lot that we need some contextual detail from that's pretty hard to just find via Google. So we want to get Joe or Johan on himself to have a chat about this and kind of explain what's been going on as much as he can or is willing to. So we're going to chase that up and hopefully have something for you in the next few weeks as this story progresses.
Yeah, he does also have a current petition, which isn't currently live. He says that we need just one person to sponsor it, one local MP to jump on board for it to actually be debated in Parliament and for investigations to commence. And he says that he wants this to happen, obviously, before the ACCC renew any license deals with APRA AMCOS and before, you know, anything is finalised on that front. Because obviously, if we do need to have a commission and do some investigations into this, so that makes sense to do it all before a deal is struck. But that's sort of where we're going to leave it, because that's about the depth of our understanding of this topic. As Eamon said, it is certainly lengthy. There's a lot to discuss. Joe has a lot on his Instagram that you know, you can dive into and listen to him go deep. And yeah, hopefully you can listen to him discuss it on our podcast as well. If he's keen and happy to jump on, we will reach out to him and hopefully have him on shortly, because it'd be good to have an understanding, you know, hopefully for us we can time it well in relation to when the ACCC and APRA AMCOS and all these announcements are being finalised.
Yes, and it's you know, we're foreshadowing an interview we haven't even requested yet here at Homebrewed, so hopefully we can get him across the line. We don't normally do this, but hopefully we can get him across the line and have an insightful conversation coming for you soon. But yeah, we will leave it there.
And if not, like I said before, if you're an artist and you want to share your experiences with us, you are more than welcome to do so. And maybe it'd be cool if you sent us a voice note or a video of, you know, just a video to camera, you talking through your experiences, and we can sort of insert your audio and sort of have a little discussion around that as well. Maybe another example of a live production meeting, but I think that could be some fun too.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we'll deliver on at least one of these things. Just stay with us. But no, thanks for tuning in. We're going to have an interview coming for you next week. If you aren't aware, we have a Patreon. If you do like what we do, we would appreciate support. Doesn't have to be much. You can actually even jump on and join as a patron for free. But if you did have a couple of bucks a month to spare, that would really help us keep the wheels turning here at Homebrewed. As we foreshadowed in previous episodes, we got a bit coming your way this year, which we are working on in the background. But you may have noticed as well, we are on YouTube now as well under Homebrewed Media. So jump on there, please give us a subscribe. Check out our videos. It's just full videos of this podcast. So if you're listening on a podcasting app while you're driving, this same thing, except just with our mugs in it, is available
I
online
don't,
with
I don't know
YouTube.
why that's appealing.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, like, yeah, to be honest with you, I don't consume podcasts in that way, but apparently a lot of people do. So if that's you, go for it. And we also have kind of some shorter clips from each episode of about 5 minutes that are going up there, just some nice bite-sized portions of things that we discuss. And of course, there's always a lot going on our socials. That's at Homebrewed Media, wherever you get social media, unless it's one of those weird ones. We're definitely not on 4chan, I can tell you that much. But, you know, we're on the main ones. So check us all out there, and we will see you next week.
See ya.